welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor. This is episode 204. It has been over a month since our last full episode, and if you're listening to these in the form of a podcast, you might be wondering why. It's because in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary, we have been hard at work opening these new fields that I talked about in the Energetic Architecture for the New Earth episode. I will be releasing those as an online class for purchase. Once we get through all of them, we're through, I think, all but the last one or two of them. This is going to be integral to thriving through the energy of this year, opening these fields. So I have been on a little bit of a side quest with the members of my online community, opening those fields and then talking a little bit more about the angelic timeline and what that means. If you feel called to join us in that space, we would love to have you. There's always a link in the show notes for that. My aim is to do 2 full episodes a month and then 2 bonus episodes a month. And I'm always in flow with what the energy is asking me to do. And over the last month, we've really been focused on the huge transformation and the huge shift that's happening at this transition into the Fire Horse year as I record this. So today we are going to talk about spirit guides, channeling, and evolving discernment. And I have a really good story for this. I have permission to share kind of what came through with a client around this. But I want to start just by saying that sometimes in the spiritual community, there is this, I've been called naive. Let's just say that many times in my life. I remember years ago, somebody telling me just because someone says they do Reiki doesn't mean that they are operating with the intention of the highest good. And to me, that just like blew my mind because I, of course, I'm not perfect and of course make mistakes and I'm sometimes unkind and my intention is always to be operating in the highest good, is always to be calling in more love. So I think what happens sometimes to those of us in the spiritual community is that we trust that everyone and everything we're working with has this intention for the highest good. And sometimes even when these beings do, it does not mean they're not fallible. So I'm talking right now about spirit guides and about how many of us connect to non-human origin beings. Sometimes it is humans who have passed on. Technically, I think the definition of spirit guides doesn't include any, it includes like someone you've never known in your life. I just use it for everything. I like spiritual support team because there's everything. I work with dragons. I work with, I have a Lemurian guide. I had an Arcturian guide. We're going to talk about that today. I work with the angels and I work directly with the seraphim. And that's another thing to understand is that it's funny. I started using the term guides on my TikTok videos a couple years ago because I found that people could relate to that more when I sort of gave the impression that the information that was coming through me was coming from somewhere outside of me. And that is kind of emblematic of this system we've been in for a long time, this system of hierarchy where there's always someone higher up than you on the ladder and they're more important than you and they have a broader view of things. And we're moving into this 5D, which is a circular way of being, which is there might be a facilitator, there might be somebody connected to a certain type of information that you don't have, and you have strengths always to offer in that community. And it's important to understand that spirit guides are not perfect. Spirit guides are fallible just like we are. And this is funny. I was in a session the other day and I was working with someone activating their angelic wings and halo, which I've been doing a ton of. And this message sort of came through like to not try for perfection. Like you don't have to try to be so perfect. And then I heard this voice kind of say, I mean, even Source isn't perfect. Have you ever seen the platypus? And my client and I both laughed. And it was kind of this, this is also part of this 3D kind of messaging or programming that we're being asked to dismantle and release, which is the all or nothing, the yes or no. This is perfect or not. This is good or bad. And every time we evolve our frequency, every time we shift our frequency, hopefully to more clarity, expansion, and harmony, our discernment must evolve with that. And you can think of this kind of like outgrowing something, that is a little bit of a judgmental term. But if you think about something that has no judgment, so let's think about as a child, maybe you had one of those big wheels, that little thing that's real close to the ground with the big wheel in front, and you ride around on the big wheel, and then eventually you outgrow the big wheel. You're just too big for the big wheel. I remember like really trying to ride it when my sisters had one. My knees were like hitting me up to my ears. So you might move from a big wheel to a tricycle. There's no judgment in that. It's a discernment call. It's like, I don't fit on the big wheel anymore. Now I need the tricycle. And then eventually the tricycle doesn't quite work anymore, and you might move on to a bike with training wheels. And then eventually the training wheels come off the bike and you're on just the two-wheel bike. And then eventually you need a larger bike. You need an adult bike from a kid bike. So you can think of discernment and an evolution in that way. The big wheel served me at one point. It no longer does. Now that I'm the size that I need a tricycle, I look at the big wheel and it doesn't quite fit. And there's no judgment around that. And sometimes there's sadness around that. Like, again, I was trying to ride the big wheel around when my sisters were little, and just, you know, not being able to be comfortable and like having a little bit of sadness about that. So it's okay to have a little bit of sadness when you're like evolving this discernment and you're moving out of any kind of a space. This goes to human relationships, this goes to jobs, this goes to communities. And what we're talking about today is working with spirit guides. And then at the end, I'm going to say a little bit about channeling. So it's important to understand that your spirit guides are not infallible. Your spirit guides do not know all. They might have a broader view of something than you do, depending on where they're coming from. But blindly trusting them is not necessarily going to do you any favors, especially as we're being asked to step into more of our own power. We need more discernment about what is serving us. And eventually, you may get to a point where you're working most directly with the highest version of yourself and less with sort of external guides. And that is when I channeled the Seraphim, I sort of like got distracted from my own story. I started using the term guides because it was more comfortable to people, and it was more comfortable to me because I wasn't talking about the Seraphim, and I certainly wasn't saying that I was one. When I connect into the Seraphim, we are a collective being. We're not really separate beings. I just happen to be here on this physical plane. And so when I am channeling, when I'm connecting with them, when I'm getting guidance from them, I'm really getting guidance from the highest soul version of myself, the most undifferentiated version of myself that is differentiated. And there have been some issues recently with myself and with people that I've worked with around guides giving false information, not necessarily being working for the highest good, being a little bit distracted by trickster energy. And I'm going to tell you a story that kind of goes through all of that. But I just think it's really important to understand that when you're working with anyone, physical or non-physical, it's important to keep setting boundaries. It's important to keep resetting your intention, to state your intention to that being. It's okay to challenge a spirit guide. And in fact, most of the time they like it. And so if you challenge your spirit guide and you get a lot of pushback, sometimes that might be a little bit of a red flag to kind of start to look deeper and figure out if this is a relationship that's currently serving your highest and most illuminated good. So let me get into my story because this illustrates this with a lot more detail than kind of the abstract way I'm talking about this right now. So I don't know if I've maybe mentioned him on the show. I know a lot of my one-on-one clients know that I had an Arcturian guide named Undroth. And the way this came through was that the Arcturians kind of showed up for me as like a collective. It felt like a council. That's how when I work with the Mintakans, I don't have like a specific guide. It's like a council of elders. So this council of Arcturians showed up and I was kind of starting to work with them. This was a few years ago. And then eventually kind of one of them stepped forward. And it was interesting from the very beginning because he didn't seem to really like me. He seemed kind of cranky. He seemed kind of like bored sometimes and like he didn't really want to be there. And honestly, I probably at that time could have been like, hey, is this for the highest and most illuminated good? And sort of done what happened a month or so ago, like a long time ago. And I'm always learning on this journey as well. And I was like, well, if this person stepped forward as my guide, there must be a reason. And maybe we're meant to learn from each other. And we did kind of start to get to know each other. And over over the course of like working with him when he would come in, at one point he sort of, I was trying to explain like how he was to a client I was working with. And I was like, he's a little bit like persnickety. He feels a little bit judgmental. And, the show Frasier popped in my head and I was like, oh, he's a little bit like Frasier and Niles on Frasier. And then all of a sudden he was like, that's perfect. You can call me Frasier. And he started showing up with a cardigan on. So eventually it was like, he had a sense of humor. It felt like we were working well together. It felt like the information that was coming through was working to support the clients it was coming through for. And there was always something that just felt like maybe a little bit off now that I look back on this. So a couple months ago, I can tell you exactly when this happened. It was on New Year's Eve, 2025. My mom fell and broke her hip. And spoiler alert, it was broken. I already spoiled the story. That's okay. So there had been a couple of previous occasions where information came in from Undroth, my Arcturian guide, that later proved to not feel true or to not be the whole truth or to be like off in some way. And I was already kind of like, I don't really like this. And I didn't have any proof of this. Here's the other thing. Like, I still have the scientific background and I was like, well, I don't want to assume that this person's not trying to help me or this being. And I don't want to assume that they're wrong if I don't know for sure. So the first time it happened was when my dog hurt his neck and Undroth said, well, it's not a disc. He just needs to rest and he'll be fine. And he did rest and he is okay. And I'm pretty sure at this point that it was a disc, and we have to be careful that he doesn't re-injure the disc, and eventually, hopefully, he won't need surgery, but he might. So that was kind of the first time where I was like, you said it wasn't a disc, but I kind of think it is, but like we never got an MRI. I didn't have proof of that. Then it happened again with a client. I'm not going to go into the details of that because that's confidential, but there was a second instance where I was like, I'm not sure the information you gave me was right. And I don't really think, I don't see how this like served the client. So then on New Year's Eve, my phone rang at about 10:20 p.m. and I saw it was my mom. And right away I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And I picked up the phone and she said, I fell. I'm lying on the ground, like waiting. She lives in an independent living place. So she's like, I'm lying on the ground waiting for the front desk to come and they've already called an ambulance, but I just wanted you to know. And I think, she was scared. And she said, I thought I was okay. And then when I tried to move my leg, I couldn't move my leg. I think I might have hurt my hip. I hope it's not broken. So I said, okay, let me know what's going on. My husband and I, we were already like getting ready for bed. So we're like, we'll meet you at the hospital. Let us know where they end up taking you. And I hung up. Once the people got in, like, leave her alone. Once the people got there and they were there helping her, I hung up. And so I was worried, obviously. My mom's 81. And there's kind of, when someone breaks their hip, like, there's some fear around that because sometimes it can be a really long recovery process. And sometimes people don't fully recover. So I was really worried about this. And I reached out to Undroth and I said, I want to know if my mom's hip is broken. Is it broken? Or maybe it, hopefully, maybe it's just badly bruised. And he's like, oh, I don't think it's broken. He didn't say it's not broken, but he said, oh, I don't think it's broken. And it was pretty, like, confident. And so I was like, oh, okay, good. So we got to the hospital and my mom said, well, the doctor is pretty sure it's broken. I'm waiting on x-ray to come and get me, but the doctor's pretty sure it's broken. So I was like, okay. And I kind of reached out to Undroth and he's like, nope, don't think it's broken. And I was like, okay. So then they took her to x-ray. And it was definitely broken and she ended up needing surgery and she's doing really well. She's recovering well, just to like, as a side note, longer recovery than I think she was hoping, but a really good recovery in terms of like how bad it could have been. She could have needed a total hip replacement. She just needed a pin, just a pin and rods and, what they call a fixation. Anyway, that being all that aside, I was really angry after this. And I said to Undroth, why did you tell me it wasn't broken? I have proof now that you were incorrect. And the other two times I was like, I don't have proof, but now I have like concrete proof that what you're telling me is wrong. Why would you tell me? Why didn't you just tell me you didn't know if you didn't know? And I was getting all this weird like hedging and I was mad. So I basically, the image I had was like grabbing him by the ear and marching him to the principal's office. I don't think Arcturians really have ears. But essentially, I kind of dragged him back to the Arcturian High Council and I said, I need to know what is going on here. This is not acceptable. This is not okay. I have used the information that came in from this guide with clients, and now I know that it is not correct. Like, I was angry, and I was like, I want some answers. I want to know what's happening here. And I was like, I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble, and this is not acceptable to me, and I'm not going to be working with you at all, and I'm not going to be working with him at all until this is like resolved. And I was kind of like, I think Undroth and I are finished, and I'm sure I felt a little bad because we had sort of grown on each other, but it seemed very clear that he never really wanted to be working with me. And I always got the impression it's like part of a punishment. And I was like, why am I somebody's punishment? Like, I want to be working with guys who really want to be working with me. And it was very interesting. The Arcturians were like, they were very apologetic, and they were kind of like, we don't really know what's happening. We need to look into this. And they essentially said they were going to launch a tribunal. That's the word they used. That like we're going to launch this like investigation. We're going to hold this tribunal, and we'll get back to you. And I was like, well, okay. In the meantime, I'm not working with you because I don't trust you guys anymore. I feel really uncomfortable about this. I actually talked to the client where some of this information came in and kind of apologized. And it turned out it hadn't like shifted what had gone on to a point that it was hurtful, I don't think. And I just felt like ethically that I needed to kind of share this with the person that it had kind of affected the most. So eventually they sort of got back to me, and they were kind of like, well, here's the deal. We are also dealing with this trickster corruption energy. And they sort of said, and I'm not sure, I might be telling this in the wrong order because some of this may have come in with this other client that I do have permission to share this story. But along the way, at a certain point, it became clear what they said to me was essentially all beings with a physical body are being asked to clear corruption right now. And what that means is that the corruption has to come to the surface. And they basically said to me, Undroth was kind of engaged with this trickster energy, and they were like, we didn't really realize that. We would never have sent him to you if we'd known that. And obviously we have some work to do on ourselves, just as you humans are working to, resolve this corruption, and not everybody is engaged with it. And they were like, in the meantime, it's probably best if you don't work with us for a while we figure our stuff out. And I was kind of like, okay, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your transparency. And I was also a little bit like, and you guys are like such experts at moving light around in the body. And so the Andromedans stepped in, and the Andromedans are kind of a combination, or they came out of Pleiadian energy and Arcturian energy. So Arcturians are they're a little bit heavy. They're very serious. They're very technical. They don't necessarily have a good sense of humor, as I learned from Undra. The Andromedans are much softer because they have that soft Pleiadian energy. The Andromedans, what has come in is that they have a choice about whether to be in a physical body or not. Pleiadians are not generally in physical bodies anymore. They're more in like orb form. Arcturians are fully in physical bodies, and Andromedans can kind of choose. So I've been starting to work with them with a little bit of trepidation and a lot of like, is this for the highest good? And a lot of discernment. This was a really important lesson for me personally in discernment. And as often happens, this was reflected with a few clients that I've seen recently as well. And one of them gave me permission to share this story because she felt like it was really important that people understood this. And so she had come to me for a virtual session, and one of her sort of main issue was like, she's like, I feel like I'm getting conflicting information from my guides, and it's driving me crazy. And she's like, the angels are telling me, trust in the process and trust in life and everything will show up for you. And which they do a lot of times. And she's like, and that's wonderful. And like, I need some practical guidance too. And she's like, I've been working with the Arcturians for a long time, and they give me practical guidance. But right now, what I feel like is there's just a lot of noise, and there's sort of conflicting information. And I'm having a really hard time like discerning what to do and discerning who to listen to. And I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So right away, I was like, I got to tell you my story about my Arcturian guide, because it came in like, this is important to share. And this person has had a lot of lifetimes as an Arcturian, is very connected to the Arcturians. And essentially through the course of this session together, we decided that she needed to separate from the Arcturians. And I've done this for multiple people now. And what I will say is that they're very loving and they're very graceful about this. Sometimes when I help people separate from energies, it's much more of a banishment. That's the word I would use. Like when I'm dealing with lizard energy or trickster energy, or sometimes it's generational lineage where like they're in there. Like I had that experience. If you remember a long time ago when I first started talking about trickster energy, I talked about my ancestors working with trickster energy and tricking me into letting them into my field and having to like banish them out of my field because they were not working for the highest and most illuminated good. So a lot of times when you have a separation, it's not always, it's like a bad breakup, right? It's not always pretty. It kind of turns into like, you are not welcome in this space and you need to go. And every time I've worked with the Arcturians to separate, they've always been like, we completely understand, we got to get our house in order, and they withdraw with love. And the top of my head is tingling, which is always a confirmation. So this person, again, there was some grief around this because this person had lived many Arcturian lifetimes and was very connected to the Arcturians. And to her credit was like, I feel the truth of this. Like, I feel like this is the right thing to do. I feel like I do need to separate from them. And, she was like connected to the point where there was kind of like a ship that was sort of like hanging out that was like had all of her people on it. And she was like, it's time for you to go home. And the ship sort of left. And again, it was very easy. It was very loving. It was they were like very, kind of not exactly apologetic, but just very loving about it. Like, we totally understand. We have to get our house in order. Like, you guys are doing the same thing. And, you know, they sort of left with love. And what stepped in for this person was an Andromedans to kind of help with the practical guidance. And the result of this, having heard from this person after this session multiple times, is that all of that sort of muddiness that she was getting in her own information that was coming through is gone. It's much more clear now. She's getting much more clear guidance. She's getting much more useful, practical guidance. And she doesn't feel like her guides are clashing. Because what was happening was the angels and the Arcturians were clashing. And this happens sometimes. And it's funny because my angels are like, are you going to talk about this? Yes, I am. Sometimes my angels don't like that I work with other beings. And I understand why. Because angels are essentially the closest to source that exists in differentiated form. The seraphim just outside of source, the archangels a little further outside of that. Now I'm working with these order of seraphim that are kind of between the seraphim and the archangels. I've been working with angels for a long time. I trust my angels. I know that my angels always have the highest and most illuminated good in mind. And they don't have all the skills that I sometimes need here on the physical plane. They don't like that I'm saying this, and they're all like, oh, she's right. Oh, like. Also, my angels have a great sense of humor, which is kind of just makes it more fun when I'm working with guides. So I was working with the Arcturians, especially in the physical body, because they are experts at manipulating energy, moving light around in the physical body. So when I had someone on my table and I'd be like, oh, I see this thing, I don't know what to do. And like the archangels would come in and be like, well, we can just like throw light at it, but it needs something more specific. The Arcturians would come in and like tinker around and like build little structures and move things around. And so I don't think that you need to banish everyone else from your field. I do think this is about discernment. And so and it's about gaining trust, and it's about just like any other relationship. A lot of us who are empaths, a lot of us who are sensitive, a lot of us who have angelic origins and Mintakan origins, and the kind of people that I tend to work with, Pleiadian origins, we tend to come in with a really open heart, and we tend to come in really trusting. Again, what some people might call naive, and what someone the other day called it purity or innocence. I think we can maintain that, and we can have discernment. So like the Andromedans that I've been working with, I have an Andromedan guide whose name I still haven't figured out. It's like WANTF something, something, something. Every time they show up, I'm like, Wantana Meta. Anyway, so I've been calling them Wan. They're not gendered, so I've been calling them. And we're starting to get to know each other. And every time they show up and offer, especially to work on someone else, it's very clear to me, this is for the highest and most illuminated good. And if it is not, then you are not welcome in this space. And I think this, first of all, this story shows just how deep this trickster energy, the roots of this go. It's not just a human thing. It's everywhere. And as we evolve out of bodies, we tend to get access to higher and more expansive information and energy. And just because a guide isn't in a human body, or a physical body, doesn't necessarily mean that they have the highest good in mind either. And even if you have the highest good in mind, like I have the highest good in mind, and I make mistakes all the time. And that was kind of where things started with Undroth. It was like, if this is a mistake, I understand, and we can work through this. But he would never take ownership of that. It was like, no, you're just misinterpreting me, or you humans don't understand. It was like always, he was a little condescending, and again, not my favorite guide that I've ever had. So it's really important to recognize that you hold the power in your differentiation in your life. And the more that you can connect with your own highest being, your own light, your own unconditional love, your own first differentiation origin, which I think for most people who resonate with me at this point, it is angelic, not always, but a lot of times, you can always trust what comes through yourself. Well, as I was saying that, I was like, that's not even true either, because sometimes there's trickster energy. You can always discern what comes through yourself with the most clarity. Let's say it that way. And sometimes you need help from outside people for that. This client that came to me was in that space. I've been in that space too, where she was like, I just don't see clearly what's happening. I don't understand why this is going on. And it never occurred to her to separate from the Arcturians because she had no reason to kind of suspect there was anything off there until I said, hey, let me tell you what's going on with the Arcturians. So we always help each other in community. We can help each other with discernment, and you hold the power in your own field. If something feels off to you, it probably is. And it's okay to interrogate it. I felt a little bit bad about dragging Undroth in front of the Arcturian High Council, but not bad enough to not do it because it was the right thing to do. And it's funny, for myself, I don't know if I would have necessarily done that as soon as I did, but when it involves other people, I'm working with clients who trust me. So they have to trust in my discernment. And that is why I am always doing my own work around authenticity and vulnerability and transparency, around clarity, expansion, and harmony. Because if I am holding a space for someone else, I have got to trust the beings that are holding the space for me, essentially. So I just want to say a quick word about channeling, because this is all related, this idea of evolving discernment. And understand that, again, this is a very extreme example of this. This is something that's like kind of a little bit of a black and white situation. And sometimes it's more like, I was really working with this group of beings for a while. I was really working with this spirit guide for a while, and it just doesn't really feel aligned to me anymore, or something feels a little bit off about it. And I want to empower you to ask your spirit guides difficult questions. And I trust my angels and they trust me. And like, we get in arguments sometimes. They'll tell me to do something and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. Usually they're right. And when I end up doing it, they're like, why didn't you just do it sooner? And I am the one with the agency. I am the one with the responsibility. I am the one with the physical vessel in this physical reality, who at the end of the day is responsible for my own karma, for my own decisions. And so I can take advice from beings that feel like they're outside of me. I can take advice from my own highest or higher selves. And at the end of the day, I am the one who needs to have the discernment and make the final decision. And I think there's been a history in the kind of spiritual world of like outsourcing our responsibility to our guides. Well, my guide said this. My guide said this. And as I said it back at the beginning, I'm not sure I ever finished this story. I started using that term on TikTok, and I saw right away that people responded to me more. I got more views. I got more comments. And so I kind of stuck with this thing about saying, my guides say this. And sometimes they do, and sometimes it's my highest self. And that's where we kind of get into this idea of channeling. Like, what is channeling and how does channeling work? So a long time ago, when I was first kind of calling in this dimensional frequency expansion and starting to channel sound and then eventually channeling light language, I got into this discussion with my guides, with the angels. When I say my guides, I'm usually talking angelic. If I just use that term, my guides, it's almost always, it's either archangels or seraphim. And sometimes they're, it all comes through as just an angelic miasma. It's not necessarily like, this is from here, this is from here. It's just like angelic information. So the information that I got back at the beginning when I first started channeling was that this direct channeling that a lot of people do is not meant to continue, especially as we evolve into the 5D further. Because it is a little bit of this outsourcing of your power, giving your power away to someone else. What do I mean by channeling? What do I mean by direct channeling? So to me, channeling is just downloading and sharing information. Opening your vessel and allowing something to come through and then sharing it. Sometimes that comes in the form of information as words. Sometimes it comes in the form of, for me, especially sound and light language. That is a channel. And what I mean by that is that I've opened to a source that is more expanded than myself, than my human body, and I'm channeling energy through. Reiki is channeling. Using universal life force energy, calling it in through your head, channeling it through your heart and out your hands. Reiki is channeling. Some people really don't like that word channeling. Some people use it in very specific terms. But to me, channeling is anything that involves connecting with a more expansive spiritual space and then calling energy through in some form. So what do I mean by direct channeling? The biggest examples I can give of direct channeling are Bashar and the man channeling him named Daryl, and Abraham Hicks, who's channeled by Esther Hicks, who's a woman. And I don't know as much about her. I know quite a bit about Daryl and Bashar just because it's something that has come up and I've read about it and I've sort of seen things about it. And they've actually done tests on Daryl's brain, which I always find the science stuff interesting. And essentially, if you listen to Daryl talk about channeling Bashar, he is essentially not there. He's talked about, it's almost like he's in a little waiting room in his mind or in his own body. And he's sort of aware to some extent of what's happening, but he's not in control of his physical body. Like Bashar is actually like coming into his physical body and moving his body and speaking with his voice. That's what I mean by direct channeling. And a long time ago, my angelic guide said they didn't like direct channeling. They didn't think we should continue doing it. And as we evolved, we wouldn't be. What they call the type of channeling I do is called collaborative channeling. This is their word, not mine. And so when I channel, and you can watch me sometimes when I channel, I am still here. I am still present. It's a little bit like, again, I'm opening sort of a sluice. That's the word that came through me. I'm opening a channel, like an actual, like I'm seeing like water going down a sluice or like a log ride for some reason. Like I'm opening the channel so that the water, the energy can flow through, but I am still fully present as I'm channeling. It's partly why I sometimes falter when I'm channeling, and especially now they've been asking me to channel with my eyes open so that angelic energy comes through, and it's hard because I'm like seeing my body and trying to receive the information and trying to let it come through. And I channel all the time in various forms. Either more open or more closed, essentially. So sometimes like there's a trickle of information coming through because I am mostly here and I need to receive the trickle, but I also need to be really functional in my physical body and my space. Sometimes, especially when it's sound and light language, it's much more open and it's more like I'm just allowing it to come through me, but I'm always aware of what I'm doing. I'm always aware of what, especially the light language, I know what the intention is. I know what it means. Increasingly, I will now, especially in one-on-one spaces, I will tell the client in English what we're doing. We're going to send some energy to open your heart space. And it's like, so they understand what's being done. Because again, your agency is the most important part of who you are. In this physical differentiation, you will never exist again in this form, in this physical version of yourself. And so you are the most important component of this differentiation. As we move into this wider space and we start connecting with these other quantum origins of ourselves and these other beings and all of this amazing stuff, it's so important to remember that you are the most important piece of your differentiation. It's not your highest self. I just had a really interesting lesson about this the other day for myself. It's not these other versions of yourself. It's you. You are here at this time in the form you're in for a reason. And when you give that agency away, you are dimming your light. You are lessening your power. And that is not what 5D awakening is about. It is about shining your light. It is about sharing your light. It is about claiming your light. And so the future of channeling, I think eventually we won't even channel, is kind of what the angels say. Like, it'll just be, we'll be so present in all our fields. And I'm starting to feel this a little bit now, that like sometimes, like yesterday I made a TikTok and I called it a collaborative channel. And I was having a hard time. If you watch it, if you're in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary, I shared the YouTube link. You can see me kind of struggling with pronouns because when I open further and let the Seraphim channel through, which is really just my highest differentiation, they always call me our human, and they sort of point at me because I'm their representative here on Earth. When I am more in this collaborative space, the information's coming through from them, and it's also coming through me. So I was sort of struggling. I was like, do I say I? Do I say our human? Do I refer to myself in the third person? That's weird. So there's a lot of nuance around this. There's a lot of discernment around this, and there's a big learning curve around this. And as we evolve, that's why I called this Spirit Guides Channeling and Evolving Discernment. Our discernment is always going to be evolving. It should always be evolving. If your discernment is not evolving, it's time to start asking more questions. Asking questions of yourself, asking questions of your guides. Sometimes I work with people and they're just like desperate. They're like, I want to be in touch with my guides. I want to hear from my guides. Your guides are always communicating with you, especially your angelic guides, especially through repeating numbers and signs. You don't necessarily need to hear them. And if and when you do, it adds a layer of complexity and responsibility to the way that you occupy your vessel, which is not to just outsource your power and responsibility to those guides. They are not you. They are not living this life. When that client said, I'm tired of the angels telling me to just trust in the universe and things will show up, they don't have bodies. They don't have to pay their bills. That's a very valid point. That is why I think we have access to all these different spaces. That is why that client wanted some guides who were sort of more connected to what it was like to have a physical body. All of that is completely fine. And we have to continually kind of work with our discernment. And like when something feels off, there's probably a reason for it. When something feels off, it's appropriate to challenge the guides. And if your guides are telling you, don't you challenge me, that's kind of a red flag. That's a very trickstery thing to do. When you feel, if you feel condescended to by your guides, they may not be who they say they are, and or they may not be operating out of the highest and most illuminated good. And in the case of the Arcturians, this is a really good case of, they sent me this guide with good intentions, with intentions for the highest good, with intentions to help, and did not realize that that trickster energy, my right ear is ringing, which is a confirmation sign, did not realize that that trickster energy had like made it so far into this particular person, this or being, into Undra, that it was something they needed to worry about. And that was a reflection of like a wider problem in their sort of collective, which we are seeing here as well, seeing all of this corruption coming to light that a lot of people still don't want to look at. They don't want to acknowledge that it's there. I understand that. And once you see it, it is your responsibility to move away from it. if you want to continue to work with more clarity, expansion, and harmony, if you want to continue to evolve spiritually, if you want to connect to the highest version of yourself in a way that is collaborative, not you getting out of the way and just letting them live your life, that doesn't do either of you any good. And a good guide would never want that for you. I remember hearing a story, just briefly, it's coming through to share this, from somebody about someone they'd known who had gone to a retreat. And this was a retreat with led by a couple people who were really into channeling. And they had a group of people. And to me, when I heard this story, I was like, this will replace the whale in my nightmares, is something my family always says. It's a Simpsons quote. But like, it sounded like these people did not have any discernment. They did not have any protections in place. They did not have any understanding of what they were working with. And two of the women in charge of this retreat both got completely taken over by other beings. And one of them never came back. And again, this is just somebody who told me a story about somebody else. Channeling can be dangerous. Channeling is, if you're, and I don't want to scare anybody, and they're telling me like, this is really important. This is a Catholic thing, but everybody knows about possession, right? Everybody's seen some sort of possession movie. There's a ton of them. The Exorcist, they're just everywhere. The Conjuring, there's all these like movies about possession. If you know anything about demonology, a demon cannot possess you without permission. And they work in this tradition. They wear you down on purpose to try to get you to give permission, or they'll pick like the weakest member of a household to try to get into the space. And I don't say that to scare you. I don't say that to even say that any of that is real. I do not work with any of that. That is not a road I ever want to go down. And again, your agency is the most important part of your power as a differentiated being. You are a sacred vessel. You are a sacred personality within your vessel. And it behooves you to be choosy about who you allow into your space, your wider space of your field, the space of your personal life, and especially the space of your body. I had a client years ago who was working with a non-corporeal being, and the being jumped into this person's body without permission, and it ended their working relationship. And the non-corporeal being didn't seem to understand that that was a violation. So that's another thing. Misunderstandings happen. So the more clear you are, the more discerning you are, the more you question motives. Again, any being, and all of my angels are nodding right now. They give me a hard time sometimes. They give me a hard time about not listening to them, or about like procrastinating or not doing what they ask me. And they're saying like, we would have it no other way. They want me to be me. They want me to question things. And if you are questioning a guide, or if something is offering to channel through you and telling you like not to ask questions or not to challenge or just to allow it in, that is a red flag, and that is when it's time to banish them completely. I promise you that if you are trying to connect with guides, it will happen in divine timing, and it will happen with your highest and most illuminated good in mind. And those guides will never tell you not to question them. They will never tell you that they need to jump into your body, especially without permission. And I don't think anybody should be jumping into anybody's body anymore. And they're all nodding. So as we move forward into this year, there's a huge awakening happening right now. You may have access to much more expanded spaces than you ever have before. And there is a little bit of seduction in that. The trickster loves seduction, literal seduction, and also the seduction of like the mind, oh, this is only going to happen between the two of us. You're the only one who can do this for me. This kind of thing. That is a red flag. It is okay to say no. It is okay to say not right now. It is absolutely imperative to have boundaries with your spiritual support team, just as you do in your physical life. The whole top of my head is hot right now. This is an important message, and this is a collaborative channel because this is coming through from the angelic space. We want you to be safe. We want you to be the best and most illuminated, highest version of yourself. That will always include you as your personhood. That will never include you getting out of the way and allowing another being to take over your body or to live through you. That is not for the highest and most illuminated good. And I'm not judging anyone who's channeling, and people like Bashar is an example, like they have a relationship of trust. And I have seen a lot of messages come through from Bashar that don't feel of the highest and most illuminated good. Just because someone's in a collective that seems like they have a higher view than we do, it does not necessarily mean that everything that comes through them is for the highest and most illuminated good. And the Arcturians are a perfect example of that. They have technology beyond our wildest dreams, and they're going through the same journey we are of identifying corruption and trying to remove it from their collective. You are sacred. You are a sacred vessel. Nothing should be allowed into your vessel without your permission and without your discernment, without that intention for the highest and most illuminated good. You will never hear me stop saying that. It is the most powerful way I know to protect myself when I'm working with other beings. And they're like, don't end on such a harsh note. The angels are all they're all standing like above me, like watching this. The guides who have your highest and most illuminated good in mind will come to you in joyful ways. They will come to you with humor. They will send you random songs. I mean, maybe not, that's me, but they will send you random signs that like only you would understand. They will show so much love and compassion and support for you. They will be like your beloved grandparents, or, you know, I mean, beyond that, we don't have words in the physical plane for how special it is to have a relationship with guides that have your highest and most illuminated good in mind. So don't let this discourage you from working with guides. Let it be a call to discernment and a call, permission, again, to ask questions, to set boundaries, to say no, just as you do in your physical life. And for some of us, that's hard. And the ones who are here to support you will honor that. They will celebrate that. They will, right now, they're all jumping up and down and like, all right, she got to the point. She got it out in a way that was a little less heavy. And the heaviness of that is important to understand too and acknowledge too. Just because something is coming from a place that seems like it has a higher view than you does not mean that it is for the highest and most illuminated good. And you can always tweak that statement. The most illuminated good part came directly from the angelic realm. That's why I started using that. It will block out what is not for you. And if you've already been working with some sort of guides and it's time to move them out, you may need help with that. And that's something that I or someone who does the kind of work that I do can help you with. And again, there's a lot of discernment needed in that space to trust the person that's holding space for you, that they are holding high ethical standards, that they're holding themselves to the same standard, that they're holding their guides to the same standard. And we're always learning. We're always growing. We're always evolving. So if you have missed these full episodes of the show and you want more, if you would like access to the super powerful activations that we do every week in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary, you also get access to a monthly virtual sound journey, a monthly virtual meetup, lots of interaction with beautiful, like-hearted individuals who are exploring their quantum origins. We would love to have you join us in that space, and there is a link in the show notes to join us there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so looking forward to how our energy continues to expand and evolve as we move further into this year of the Fire Horse. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. I will see you on the next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays.